Hello again. So in my previous video I talked about the opening sequence and the key learning points that a beginner student must demonstrate before I'm willing to teach them the 3 steps forward. And I'll put a link to that video up at the top there. So in this video I'm going to talk about the 3 steps forward and the 3 steps back, although in fact I don't teach the 3 steps back until I'm satisfied that they're adhering to the key points of the 3 steps forward. As I mentioned in the previous video, these key points are all about things that the student just needs to remember to do. They are things that do not require months of body conditioning. The student simply needs to pay attention in class and practice mindfully at home. So let's take a look. So first is the change from the high horse stance to the back stance. Now, when students are in the high horse stance, I teach them this swaying motion so that they learn to shift weight smoothly from side to side while keeping their center line vertical. Now, anybody can do this. You don't need special training, you don't need special conditioning. So when they do the shift, I expect them to smoothly move their weight, bring their foot in, smoothly move their weight again, circle out. Square hips, the way I describe it is both your pistols are pointing forward. So when I see them doing this, it's because they weren't listening. And when I say both your pistols pointing forward, it's evocative. Everybody knows about gunslingers. So that analogy reminds them that their opponent is there. You don't point your pistols over there. Now the position of the feet, I'm not going to be too fussed if the foot is straight. I'm not going to be very fussed about the position of the foot here, so long as it's not completely pointed out to the side, because that means the femur is just not in the right position at all. So they need to be around 45 degrees. Again, doesn't take months of conditioning to do that. Ideally foot turned in, but if the foot is straight, that's okay. The key thing is that the hips are pointing forward, posterior pelvic tilt, chin tucked, shoulders over hips. They must maintain the squareness of the guard. So none of this, fingers open. So now we'll take a look at the forward motion. First, all they need to do is drop their hands. They literally just need to switch their hands off. What they don't want to do is this. Lift the elbows or straighten the elbows in any way. It's literally just that. It doesn't require special training. So if they do anything other than just drop their hands, not acceptable. Next, they bring their hands back to here. Again, if they lift the shoulders, if they lift the elbows, not acceptable. Once the hands get to here, they draw the elbows back. So they need to maintain the square. Again, it doesn't take special training. So if they do that, unacceptable. Maintain the square, draw the elbows back. Same point here as I made in the previous video about chambering. Then they need to turn the hands down. If they forget to do that, they're not paying attention. It doesn't take special training to turn the hands down. When they shoot forward, they should ideally go step, and then the hands and the rear foot arrive at the same time. But I'm not going to be very fussy about the timing of that. So if they go 1, 2, and then shoot, that's acceptable. Even if they go shoot 1, 2, I'm not going to penalize them heavily for that. Timing is something that Some people need to develop over a month, 2 months. That's ideally, they need to be able to maintain the square. So if they're doing this, no. If their hands are up too high, no. If their hands are down too low, no. If their elbows are obviously bent, no. Some exceptions, some people have very immobile joints. If you're born with immobile joints, no amount of stretching is going to give you more mobility. So some people physically cannot fully lock out their elbows. In the same way that some people can hyperextend their elbows, some people can only hypoextend their elbows. So if somebody is doing that, it might not be intentional, it might simply be just how their body works, so that's acceptable. It's out there if they can. Another very common mistake is this. So we're here, and it's coming over the top. Unacceptable. Doesn't take any special training just to push the hands out straight. They just need to pay attention and practice it. Then, sinking the hands. Down low. Right, so the point of this is to learn to coordinate sinking the dantian with sinking the hands. Right. There's no combative application for that. It's purely about coordinating the hands with the lowering of the dantian. What we don't want is this, that they bend the elbows as they go down. So they need to sink the hands, maintain the square, so any loss of the square is unacceptable. Arms straight, hands down low. Once they get to there, they simply need to bend the elbow, bend the wrist. So if they lose the square there, unacceptable. All they have to do is bend the elbow, bend the wrist. This, as before, except you're in your Sanzhan Mabu going into your Gongbu. So the chamber part is the same. Again, we're looking for the rotation of the femur. So we need to see them making some effort to rotate the femur. If you can see evidence of that, then that's acceptable. Doesn't matter if they can't rotate the femur very much. But what we don't want, as I mentioned before, lifting the heel, thus pivoting on the ball of the foot or pivoting on the heel. So they need to be able to pivot on the center of the foot, and they do that by rotating the femur. We also need them to go forward slightly. So when they're sitting in their back stance, if they glance down, they can see their toes. But when they pivot into their forward stance, they glance down, they cannot see their toes. If they can see their toes, they haven't gone forward enough. Then the release as before. So the reverse pivot and the release, same as at the end of the opening sequence. So the 3 steps back, the only difference is that you're going backwards on the step. Everything else is the same, all the key points are the same. So when they go back, what we don't want is this. Big temptation for them to do that, more so going back than going forward. So they need to learn to, if they can't spring off the front leg, they need to at least be able to shift their weight smoothly forward, take their weight on the front leg, and then move back. But if they're rooting properly, they're beginners, they're probably not rooting properly. It should just spring back. Now, this is all the same as before. This time, the front foot and the hand should land together. So the hand lands when the second foot lands. So if you're moving forward, the second foot is the rear foot. If you're moving back, the second foot is the front foot. So ideally, we were looking for that coordination, but I don't expect beginners to demonstrate that level of coordination before I teach them the final sequence. And really, that's it. 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. And again, I emphasize, these are key points that don't require a lot of conditioning. They just need the student to pay attention and practice. Thanks very much.